So, interestingly enough, when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens and what they did in the 5th overall spot in this most recent NHL Entry Draft, everybody is talking about the guy that they selected. And for good reason, right? Ivan Demidov, everybody, is the Montreal Canadiens' newest top prospect. But in this video, what I wanted to do was go over an idea about Demidov that I don't really think has been discussed too much by Montreal Canadiens fans, but this idea I think is crazy enough that there actually could be a valuable discussion to have about it. So, as everybody is familiar with, Ivan Demidov, the Habs' 5th overall pick, is arguably the most talented offensive prospect in the entire draft. That's not to discredit the absolute game-breaking, two-way, grinder, point-producing, goal-scoring ability of a guy like Macklin Celebrini, who was taken 1st overall, but I think it's been a pretty common idea among scouting communities this season that if you want to just talk about pure offensive creativity, puck skills, dangles, how they read the offensive zone and how they can create points, Ivan Demidov has a good chance of being quote-unquote better than Macklin Celebrini. We had discussed all this and more in a video a few days ago on the channel, so you can go ahead and check out that conversation if you wish. But one of the ideas about Demidov heading into the draft, and especially after he got selected by Montreal, was that this would be the guy to ultimately add this point-producing presence to the top 6. Probably on the wing, a guy who could maybe play with Slafkovsky or with a Caulfield or something if you wanted to take one of those other guys off of their top-line spot. Ivan Demidov could be that elite, maybe even franchise-defining offensive player on the wing. But in this video, we're going over to a Reddit post made on the RHabs sub by GoHabsGo31, because what they did was they went on to the MHL's website, not the NHL, the National Hockey League, the MHL, the Junior League in Russia. Because in an interview from May of this year, there was a conversation with Ivan Demidov as to whether or not the guy could actually play center. Here's the Reddit post and the text included translated. They asked Ivan Demidov, "Do your functions and vision change noticeably depending on whether you play center or wing?" They do. Playing center is more work because you are skating more and you have more defensive responsibility. I feel like I'm more into the game at center and I have better vision on the ice, but I'm perfectly comfortable playing either center or wing. Since you enjoy playing center more, have you thought on working on taking faceoffs and converting as a center? I have, and it would be great, but it's too soon to guess in the future. I guess everything depends on the coaching staff and their decisions. Now, this article is from May, so it's most likely going out there and talking about Demidov and his projectability in the SKA program, but I feel like it's a pretty reasonable idea to assume that, hey, when he talks about it depends on the coaching staff, what they want him to do, he's also referring to whatever team ends up drafting him in the 2024 draft. Spoiler alert, it's Montreal. With this in mind, I wanted to open the idea as to whether or not Ivan Demidov has what it takes to fully dethrone Nick Suzuki from the #1 center spot. Now, I'll just say it right here. I think for a good chunk of draft projectability, programming, and from a lot of what people were looking at when they were scouting this guy, it was a pretty common idea that his projectability would lie somewhere on the wing. But let's just say he ends up going at center. Let's say he plays center, and let's say he does well. Let's say he excels and even plays some of his best hockey as a center. He does say that it's more work, you have more ice to cover, you have to skate a little bit harder, you have defensive responsibility that the wingers don't have. So at least he acknowledges that there are differences and more of a role on the team. But at the same time, the fact that he's saying that he's comfortable doing it and that he would be totally fine wherever is also interesting to note too. Ivan Demidov is one of the most talented prospects in this NHL draft. So if there's anybody going out there and saying, hey, if you want to play me at center, I can play at center. Like, I can do whatever you want, just tell me. If there's anybody that's going to go out there and say something like that, and I have full confidence in them saying that, I feel like Demidov is that guy. And ultimately, when it comes to his point-producing ceiling, I mean, People were talking about how a floor for Demidov could be somewhere in the 70-point range. Maybe his ceiling is in the 90, 100-point range. He could do that as a winger. He may be able to do similar things as a center, depending on if he's able to get that role locked down. But ultimately, if you wanted to say he could dethrone Nick, honestly, I actually do think there's a projectable path for him to do that. And it's not totally unreasonable either. I mean, Nick Suzuki, of course, I love my captain. I love the path that Nick Suzuki took to get to this spot. He was traded from Max Pacioretty, and there was the entire, the Habs got the worst prospect between him and Cody Glass, boo-hoo, and then he became fantastic. Now he's the captain. Trading away Max got themselves their future captain in Nick Suzuki, a 70-point center. He's got two-way responsibility himself. He's a very good player. If he was just a bit faster, I feel like Nick Suzuki would be like absolute, fully elite status in the NHL. But the way his hockey mind works, the way he's able to create plays, he's a very smart player, very cerebral, and very good. But ultimately, if you were to tell me in 2024, right here, you gotta pick one. You're building your franchise into the future. Do you take Nick Suzuki, who is 24, 25 years old, or Ivan Demidov? Honestly, if you're talking about building your team into the future, I'm saying Demidov, man. Like, I think Demidov has a higher ceiling than Nick Suzuki has ever had in his NHL career, and it's already been a common idea that, hey, he is the first-line center in Montreal, but if he was on some other team, Nick Suzuki could be a really good second-line center. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about here. If you have Ivan Demidov as the number one, and let's say he is as good as a number one as some of these other Russian players have been. Okay, Evgeny Kuznetsov's on everybody's mind because that guy just got bought out and he's heading off to Russia. Kuznetsov was a number one center in Washington. There are other Russian players who have exhibited similar offensive projectabilities, guys like Nikita Kucherov, Kirill Kaprizov, Artemi Panarin. I get that these guys are not centers per se, but if you have a center who is that capable, let's say Kirill Kaprizov, but at center. He's on Montreal. His name is Ivan Demidov. If you have Demidov as your one and Suzuki as your two, who cares who's your third and fourth line center? That is an incredible center core. If you wanted to stack it up, say, sorry, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, let's go Demidov, Caulfield, Slavkovsky instead. Play Suzuki with Doc and Newhook on the second line or whatever. Long term, you maybe have a Josh Waugh slip in there. You have somebody else maybe signing in free agency, making an impact in Montreal. There could be some really good things going down with the Habs. If Ivan Demidov decides, hey, I can do center, I can play that, I would be okay with that. So, heading into the next few years, I do think this is a possibility that Canadiens fans hadn't really thought about until they actually read this entire thing here from Demidov and his article from May of 2024. I mean, some of the comments on the subreddit are going out there and freaking out about this. Hey, if Ivan Demidov is a 100-point center, there's no way that guy should have been available at number 5 overall in the 2024 NHL Entry Draft. It's just so good. He's so good. And I get it, Macklin Celebrini is in every situation's 80-point, 90-point caliber center himself with some incredible intangibles and strong work ethic to boot. I mean, he is so good, it's why he went first overall. But if Ivan Demidov ends up outproducing Celebrini for their entire careers, and he does so as a center, it kind of fuels into that discussion we had the other day about whether or not Demidov is the better prospect in general. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Ivan Demidov and his ability to play C? Could he and will he dethrone Nick Suzuki in the upcoming years to come for the Montreal Canadiens? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If Nick Suzuki is a second-line center, how good is he in that spot? He's already cooked NHL forward cores as a number 1C. If he's given lesser competition playing as the second-line center, and maybe let's say the minutes are the same too, they split the first and second line evenly, there's no telling how high Nick Suzuki's ceiling could get as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.